This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey. Here are your headlines. Inspectors from the UN nuclear watchdog head to Ukraine's embattled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant amid fears of a potential radiation disaster. Pakistan declares a serious climate catastrophe as floods sweep away roads, villages and homes, with more than 1,000 people killed since June. And liftoff postponed. NASA delays the launch of the Artemis moon rocket due to a technical issue.
The eyes of Europe have turned to the Zaporizhzhia power station. After weeks of hard negotiations, inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency have travelled to Ukraine to verify whether Europe's largest nuclear power plant, occupied by Russian troops, has emerged unscathed from constant attacks between both sides. The mission is a high-risk one.
Without an exaggeration, this mission will be the hardest in the history of IAEA, given the active combat activities undertaken by the Russian Federation on the ground, and also the very blatant way that Russia is trying to legitimize its presence at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
Moscow also says it supports the mission, but calls for more pressure on Kyiv.
Look, pressure on the Ukrainian side to stop shelling the plant's territory could ease the tensions. Russia is interested in the IAEA's mission. It has taken part in its preparation.
Meanwhile, fears of another nuclear disaster like Chernobyl have put European leaders on edge.
We have a common concern. Firstly, nuclear safety and security shouldn't be compromised in this war. So this mission is important. It must protect this plant and the safety and security of the entire region. Secondly, Ukrainian sovereignty over this nuclear plant must not be disputed. Nuclear energy must not be a war tool, and it's important to defend Ukrainian sovereignty over this nuclear plant.
Elsewhere, Russians and Ukrainians have again blamed each other for last night's shelling of Enerhodar, the town where the power plant is located. Kyiv accuses Russia of using the plant as a shield for attacks on its positions.
Egypt is plunged into darkness as the government rations electricity in an effort to conserve energy for export and boost foreign currency reserves. Russia's war in Ukraine has had an immediate impact on the country, with Cairo turning to the IMF to help mitigate the economic fallout. However, talks are dragging and the faults in the power rationing have sparked criticism.
There are frequent power cuts. It occurs when people are studying, working, and it lasts for a very long time. For instance, the power can go out at 7 p.m. and not come back till next morning.
Yes, there are power outages caused by cable breakage. So the electricity goes out for like an hour. They say it's due to the heat and overload.
It's also lights out in Europe as countries brace for the looming energy crisis. Despite being one of the world's wealthiest countries, Switzerland relies heavily on Russian gas and French nuclear power, both of which are in short supply, to sustain its population during the winter months. Meanwhile, barely a year after closing the Moorburg coal station, Germany is considering reopening the plant in order to secure its energy supplies. While it is considered as a temporary solution, logistics, infrastructure and the lack of manpower are proving to be significant obstacles.
In Pakistan, the threat of more people dying in flooding remains high. Since the start of the monsoon season in mid-June, more than 1,000 people have been killed by the violent storms. 80,000 hectares of agricultural land have been destroyed and millions of people have been left homeless, without food or drinking water. Such is the case of a couple in Baluchistan in the south of the country, one of the worst affected areas. Their house has been submerged by the waters and they've got nothing left.
It's all very sad. All my belongings are submerged, my home inundated. Many parts of my home are damaged. I'm worried. My children are hungry and sick. I'm in pain. What should I do? I regret now why this house was built. Now I think how to feed the children or build a house. Now there's no one that earns a wage.
Almost 33 million people have been affected by the torrential rains, or 1 in 7 Pakistanis. The government has deployed the army in some provinces to help people trapped by the torrents, and a state of emergency has been declared by the Prime Minister. Shehbaz Sharif said the central government's granting 10 billion rupees, or just over 45 million euros, for Baluchistan province, adding that the National Disaster Management Authority, along with provisional government, will plan relief works. Southern Pakistan is bracing for another deluge over the next few days that could see the death toll climb higher.
Bullet holes in West Bank pedestrian signs. It's an innocuous marker of the almost nightly raids carried out by Israeli security forces here. At least 85 Palestinians have been killed so far this year, making it the deadliest period in the occupied territory in 6 years. But Israel says the majority of these people were violent and that every precaution is taken to protect civilians.
The Israeli forces always operate on basis of very accurate intelligence. They operate only to apprehend terrorists that we know that are involved in terror or are planning to attack Israelis. And in such scenarios, in many occasions, fire is opened on our forces and we need to respond. And it's always very, very accurate.
This was not the situation in the case of Salah Sawafta, who was killed, it's claimed, while going to a bakery. Israel says it's investigating.
He had no connection to any political or militant factions. His goal in life was to secure the future of his son and daughters, especially since he had 2 daughters who study at university.
Many families have similar stories here. Israel has occupied the West Bank for 55 years now. Yet peace between the two sides looks further apart than ever.
Hundreds of supporters of the influential Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr have stormed Iraq's government palace following his announcement that he will resign from politics. Scaling the concrete walls surrounding the building, they broke into the Republican Palace, the seat of the current caretaker Prime Minister, and chanted slogans in support of the cleric. Last month, thousands of al-Sadr's followers occupied parliament in an attempt to prevent rival factions from forming a government. This announcement comes as Baghdad plunges deeper into a political crisis, fueled by the 2021 legislative elections. This is not the first time the cleric has announced his retirement from politics. However, many fear his statement could lead to further escalation. Iraq's military has implemented a curfew, calling on the protesters to pull back from the green zone and exercise self-restraint in order to prevent clashes or the spilling of Iraqi blood.
3, 2, 1, but no liftoff for NASA's mega rocket Artemis, which was to orbit the moon in a test flight. Fuel leaks have forced NASA to abandon the 6-week mission. The aircraft was not going to fly with a human crew, but instead test dummies fitted with sensors to measure vibration, cosmic radiation and other conditions. The next attempt could take place on Friday at the earliest. This mission will kick off NASA's 21st century moon exploration program, named Artemis after Apollo's mythical twin sister. Assuming the test goes well, astronauts will climb aboard for the second flight and progress around the moon and back as soon as 2024. A 2-person lunar landing could then follow by the end of 2025.